A shocking fall from grace. In less than a year, P. Diddy went from beloved music icon to disgraced sexual predator, at least according to the charges from the feds. Right now, he's behind bars in New York, the same place where just last year, he was given a key to the city. It was a disturbing set of allegations that led to Diddy's arrest in the way of multiple civil suits brought by accusers. And in some of those suits, co-defendants are listed, and in others, celebrities. Could it be a time of reckoning for them too? We're taking a deep dive into all the celebrities listed in Diddy's civil lawsuits and whether they too could face federal charges. I'm Sierra Gillespie, and this is Law and Crime News. A groundbreaking case brought forth just this week when 54-year-old Sean Diddy Combs was arrested on September 15th. He now faces some pretty serious federal charges: racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and transportation to engage in prostitution. Diddy was indicted by a federal grand jury and is now being held in Brooklyn at the Metropolitan Detention Center after he was twice denied bail. Diddy's attorneys say he was in New York for about a week before the arrest, anticipating the federal indictment. But he wasn't the only one who kind of saw this coming. After federal investigators raided two of Diddy's homes back in March, we kind of had an idea something was on the way. Just this week, we learned some of the items that investigators collected during those raids of Diddy's homes in both Miami and Los Angeles. According to the indictment against Diddy, investigators...
Yo, what's poppin', Ric Mil family? Shout out to everybody that's been showing love, support, commenting, just doing the dang thing. Shout out to all the new subscribers. I appreciate you and welcome y'all to the family as well. We're going to be discussing about all the new celebrities that's being named or that's coming out little by little, that's making appearances inside these court cases little by little. As you can see, Diddy's been going through it. They're going through all the evidence, and names are starting to be named. So we're going to go through, see what's going on with the rest of this, and appreciate everybody that's rocking with me. Also, if you're new to the channel, just definitely want to wish everybody that's my main subscribers as well a happy birthday, my day ones. But if you're new to this channel, go ahead and subscribe. Go ahead and give the button a like, because you already know, man, we're trying to get this channel growing so we can put more content out there, give you more of what you like. So shout out to everybody, and welcome to the Ric Mil family. Let's go ahead and get it popping and see what else is going on inside this video.
Seized more than 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricants from his homes. The court doc states that these items were used in something referred to as freak-offs, which were elaborate and produced sex performances that Combs arranged, directed, masturbated during, and often electronically recorded. According to prosecutors, Diddy and his associates transported commercial sex workers over state lines and even internationally. Diddy then allegedly gave these sex workers and victims controlled substances, at times unbeknownst to the victims. Prosecutors say Diddy did this to keep the victims obedient and compliant. He then took videos of victims having sex with these sex workers, sometimes without their consent. After all this, both Diddy and the victims would receive IV fluids to recover from the physical exertion and drug use. Federal investigators say that during the raids of Diddy's homes, they collected some of these recordings showing the disturbing details of these freak-offs. And the feds had a heads up about these recordings, thanks to some of the civil lawsuits filed against Diddy, namely the one brought by Rodney Jones, also known as the producer Lil Rod. Lil Rod worked with Diddy on his Love album starting in 2022 and says he experienced months of abuse all at the hands of Diddy. In his lengthy civil suit, Lil Rod refers to these recordings saying, quote, "Mr. Combs required Mr. Jones," that's Lil Rod, "to record him constantly. Mr. Jones has secured hundreds of hours of footage and audio recordings of Mr. Combs, his staff, and his guests engaging in some serious illegal activity." Lil Rod's lawsuit also lays out some other pretty disturbing claims, like that Diddy sexually assaulted him and forced Lil Rod to have sex with a prostitute. But Lil Rod's lawsuit came out swinging in more ways than one. Not only did it shed light on the dark allegations against Diddy, but it dropped some high-profile celebrity names too. First, there's Academy Award-winning actor Cuba Gooding Jr. Lil Rod alleges Diddy was, quote, "grooming him to pass him off to his friends." This fear became reality when Mr. Combs introduced Mr. Jones to Cuba Gooding Jr. while they were on Mr. Combs' yacht. The lawsuit includes pictures of this too, showing both Diddy with Cuba and then Cuba with his arms around Lil Rod. Court docs go on to say, quote, "Cuba Gooding Jr. began touching, groping, and fondling Mr. Jones's legs, his upper inner thighs near his groin, and the small of his back near his butt."
As we already know, Lil Rod, he's definitely alongside Cassie. A lot of their lawsuit kind of coincide with a lot of the similar behaviors. So as we're going to keep deep diving into this, we're going to see what other celebrities are going to be popping up, what other allegations are being made. Let's see what else is going on. Let's see. Man, this is wild.
He rejected his advances, and Mr. Gooding Jr. did not stop until Mr. Jones forcibly pushed him away. Here's former prosecutor Melba Pearson.
In the last couple of years, there were allegations against him for sexual assault. So now we had those prior allegations, and now we see him tied to this case as allegedly trying to, assault a little Rod, assault others.
Back in 2019, Cuba was booked on misdemeanor charges of forcible touching and sexual abuse after allegedly groping a woman in Times Square. By the next year, 3 women had come forward accusing him of non-consensual sexual touching. He eventually reached a plea deal with prosecutors that required 6 months of counseling but no jail time. Just this summer, he appeared on Dan Abrams' Live, where he discussed those charges.
You pleaded guilty to a forcible touching misdemeanor in 2022, eventually led to a guilty plea of a lesser charge. A year later, you settled a federal civil lawsuit, 2 more civil misconduct lawsuits. Can you understand why some would say, don't want to cast this guy?
Sure, but I can also understand some people who come up to me in the street all the time and yell, show me the money, and say, hang in there, and I see what you're going through. You know, you make movies for an audience of people, right? So right now, I'm making a movie for faith-based people who are excited to renew our hope in humanity, especially the times we're in, dealing with politics and the world issues that are going on. So that's where I am now.
And have you expressed regret, sorrow, apologies for what happened previously?
Everything that happens in my life is for a reason. I believe that. And if I continue to walk on my path, whatever that is, I know at the end result, it'll be to make me stronger, to be a better person, to be a better father, you know? And right now, that's the moment I'm in.
Back to Melba. She says it's possible that charges could be brought against the actor.
I'm getting the feeling where there's smoke, there's fire, right? Because now we have 2 different instances where you're accused of the same type of behavior, years apart. I think there's something there. And I don't know that Cuba Gooding Jr.
And you see, that's what I'm talking about. Like, they're going to try to, show that this is a pattern, this behavior that he's admitting is a pattern. It's gonna be an interesting case to watch. Hoping that lead and all the other big content creators, they cover it, so that way we can get more insight and more in-depth details from a legal perspective behind this. But let's see what else is going on. Let go.
Jr. is going to escape from that one because he already saw definitely people moving away from him within Hollywood circles and other circles once those first sexual assault allegations came out. So at this point, I don't think he's going to get away with it a second time.
Is it possible that he could face charges based on these allegations that were brought forward by Lil Rod?
It is possible as well. Again, we've got the statute of limitations issue to deal with. So depending on the time frame of when this happened is, again, the Adult Survivors Act, which was the vehicle where many of these lawsuits came out, many of these civil lawsuits came out, there was a finite amount of time for those suits to be filed. The time frame is going to be very, very important. What witnesses come forward, because again, this may not be a situation where DNA may be at play. This may be more of a situation of, hey, yes, I was there and I recall, Cuba Gooding Jr., putting his hands on Lil Rod, or I recall certain aspects. So it's going to be a very witness intensive type of case. And the question is, will the witnesses be willing to come forward?
Another high profile name listed in Lil Rod's lawsuit is Jennifer Lopez.
From the standpoint of the names of the celebrities that were tied to this, the fact that Jennifer Lopez was tied to this back when she was involved in or party to a shooting at a nightclub when she was dating Diddy, and is now alleged to have brought the gun with her to the scene and gave it to Diddy, and that's how the shooting occurred.
Lil Rod's team brings up J-Lo when establishing Diddy's history, writing his, quote, RICO enterprise has existed for at least 20 years, dating back to the 1999 nightclub shooting in NYC, when Mr. Combs required his then-girlfriend Jennifer Lopez to transport his illegal firearm into the NYC nightclub. The court docs also allege Diddy forced his then-artist Shine to assume responsibility for the shooting of several individuals. The shooting happened on December 27, 1999 at about 2:55 a.m. A fight broke out at a nightclub in New York City between Diddy, Jamal Barrow, who's known as the rapper Shine, and Matthew Allen, who went by the nickname Scar. Guns were drawn and 3 people were shot. No one suffered any life-threatening injuries, and the victims were not involved in the fight. J-Lo and Diddy fled from the scene in a car, but were later arrested and charged. J-Lo's charges were dropped, but the others stuck. Diddy was acquitted, but Shine was sentenced to 10 years in prison. He was released in 2009 and deported back to his home country of Belize. Lil Rod alleges it was Diddy who pulled the trigger, and Shine just took the fall for him. Because of this allegation, experts like former FBI agent Bobby Chacon say investigators could take a second look at the shooting. If there's a civil lawsuit that lays out this major allegation, what would it take to reopen an investigation into something that happened 25 years ago?
Well, it would take a different look at it. So in other words, he was acquitted on state murder charges. Now, federal charges can be different. You can have RICO, you can have a continuing criminal enterprise, you can have, so the underlying acts, the predicate acts, if we used to call them when I worked RICO cases, a RICO predicate act could be something like that 1999 case, and you can use it as a predicate act. You can bring it up. When I worked cold cases of this type, sometimes with the passage of time, people aren't as intimidated and they're not as threatened, and they get away from the person who was the threat. And they feel more forthcoming to testify or to give statements in lieu of testimony. But certainly,
And that's a great point, because now with Diddy behind scene, he can't really intimidate all these people that he was once intimidating before, to keep them quiet, throwing the money around and manipulating people to make sure that they can't say anything. Of course, it's all alleged. But it's just wild to think that this 20-year case ago, if they're going to open that up with J-Lo, I'm pretty sure they're going to review everything going on with Kim Porter. They're going to review the murders of Tupac and Big. They're going to probably go more in depth and deep, because you got to look at who profited the most from those during that time. And to my knowledge, it was Diddy and the record labels. So let's see how this plays out, y'all. Let's proceed.
I think that that case is going to be part of it. In the aftermath of that, they have witnesses that say he bragged about intimidating witnesses, paying off jurors. And certainly when you have that kind of stuff, if you go back and you find that juror that was paid off, or jurors, multiple, that may have been paid off, certainly that gives you the impetus to kind of come forward and refresh those charges on a federal case. So the federal cases will be a little different. The charges are a little different, so it's not double jeopardy. And so I think that that case that you mentioned, that you cite, I think is certainly one of the ones they're looking to build into a much bigger, to me, maybe a RICO type case.
We also know that federal investigators have spoken to other plaintiffs in civil cases against Diddy to learn more about his personality and what he's like in real life. That means J-Lo is someone the feds will want to talk to if they haven't already. It also means she could be called to testify against him.
It's possible. It's absolutely possible. If I was the prosecutor handling that case, I absolutely would list her, right? But of course, we need to know whether or not she'd be cooperative. That, of course, changes the strategy when it comes to trial. So you may list someone as a potential witness. That does not mean you're necessarily going to call them. The question is whether or not their testimony is really going to help you. But there is a universe where she could testify against him in terms of, violence, in terms of his interactions with other artists, especially the folks that have been coming forward alleging that he has harmed them in some way or engaged in, human trafficking and sex trafficking. So was she aware of any of that going on? Did she see him with underage girls? channels, or was she present for when some of those videos were taken that Little Rod included screenshots of those videos in his pleadings? So how much of that did she know? When did she know it? And what actions did she take at the time? Is that part of the reason why they broke up? We don't know. So all of this will remain to be seen. Obviously, the prosecution and law enforcement need to speak with her, get a statement from her to understand what she knows or what she could be able to testify to, and then make appropriate decisions from there.
But it's not just artists that Lil Rod named either. He specifically mentioned Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, in court docs. It reads in part, quote, Mr. Combs was known for throwing the best parties. Affiliation with and/or sponsorship of Mr. Combs' sex trafficking parties garner legitimacy and access to celebrities, such as famous athletes, political figures, artists, musicians, and international dignitaries like British Royal Prince Harry. Why even name Prince Harry? There's no allegations against him or anything, but why bring him up?
I think it may have been a move to bring more credibility to the filing and say that, basically he being Diddy, was using his fame, fortune, and influence to insulate himself. So he was able to legitimize some of the activities he was doing by having these lavish parties, bringing all these A-list celebrities, but somewhere in a back room or somewhere in another wing, horrible things were happening. So the fact that Prince Harry was there does not necessarily mean he was participating in what was happening.
And you know what's wild, everybody, too, is that from what I've been seeing in this whole situation is that in the Cassie case, I guess they name dropped a lot of these celebrities just to garner a lot of attention to this case, to actually make it more bigger, to get the mainstream media involved, so that way they can understand, hey, we need to shed some light to this. So by mentioning all these major celebrities, it's definitely going to garner a lot of waves in the media. So it's a smart tactic on their counsel behalf, on their legal counsel, to actually go ahead and actually look at it from that perspective. So let's see what else they got to say.
Happening. And just because you're at a party doesn't mean you know what's happening in every inch of the house. I mean, if you think about it, if the party's being thrown in a mansion, there are various floors and wings. So it is completely possible that he was there and did not participate. Now, if you had said Prince Andrew, especially as a result of the allegations that came out in connection with the Epstein case, that they were close and that they traveled together, and there was a person that alleged that he had sexually assaulted her while she was underage, that would be a different story. But Prince Harry and the way that it was mentioned seemed to be very, again, just sort of trying to bring legitimacy and talk about these were the people that Diddy surrounded himself by to protect himself.
Prince Harry has no criminal charges or even any accusations of illegal activity, but he could still see the inside of a courtroom in a defamation case.
It's possible that Prince Harry may be able to preserve his reputation. And since it was such a minuscule mention in the greater context of this filing, he may be okay.
Another celebrity mentioned in Lil Rod's lawsuit is Young Miami, who dated Diddy from 2021 to 2023. According to the lawsuit, Young Miami's cousin assaulted Lil Rod during the Thanksgiving holiday in 2022. It reads, quote, Young Miami's cousin burst into the bathroom and began groping Mr. Jones. She started undressing and attempted to straddle him and have sex with him in the presence of Mr. Combs and his staff. Similar to Prince Harry, there are no allegations against Young Miami herself, so there's probably no worry of charges being filed against her. But there could be charges against some of the other people listed in Lil Rod's lawsuit. That's people like Diddy's chief of staff, Christina Coram, who Lil Rod compares to Ghislaine Maxwell, the longtime companion of Jeffrey Epstein. Epstein died by suicide in 2019 when he faced numerous charges of sexual assault over the course of multiple years. Maxwell was charged and found guilty of sex trafficking in relation to her time with Epstein, and she's currently serving a lengthy prison sentence. Lil Rod says Christina Coram ordered sex workers and prostitutes for Mr. Combs and ordered and distributed ecstasy, cocaine, GHB, ketamine, marijuana, and mushrooms to Mr. Combs and his celebrity guests who were present on his rented yacht and his homes in LA, NYC, and Miami. This is referenced in Diddy's indictment too, saying members and associates of the Combs enterprise, including high-ranking supervisors, security staff, household staff, personal assistants, and other Combs business employees, facilitated the freak-offs by, among other things, booking hotel rooms for the freak-offs, stocking the hotel rooms in advance with the required freak-off supplies, including controlled substances, baby oil, lubricant, extra linens, and lighting. Federal prosecutors also allege these associates arranged.
So what it seems like is that they're going to be trying to get a lot of people in this RICO case, like if they were contributing in any capacity of drugging these people, bringing any type of drugs, or I guess that pink powder, that pink juice, that pink Diddy juice. Anybody that was providing the pink Diddy juice inside the hotel's room. So not necessarily the baby oil and all those things, but more so not having the consent of providing these illegal substances to the individuals that were consuming them. And it seemed like they got a case in regards to that, because with all this footage and people consuming everything, people not remembering stuff, and people being caught in compromised positions, and that could have been used as leverage against them. So we're going to see how that plays out. Let's go.
Travel for victims and commercial sex workers, delivered large sums of cash to Diddy to pay these sex workers, and even scheduled the delivery of IV fluids. So according to Melba, it's possible some of these associates are charged too.
None of these cases, when you have these high-profile people that have been using people over years, none of these cases happen without a handler. R. Kelly had a handler. Epstein had a handler, Weinstein had a handler. Everybody has, in those scenarios of those powerful people, powerful men that are abusing other people, they have someone that does their dirty work. And it's usually not only just one person, it's several people who may have different duties. So again, seeing this woman being his handler, being the person to get him drugs, being the person to procure sex workers for him, being the person to basically be on cleanup duty in case of, covering up or silencing people that might want to come forward, that's not unusual. And she is also going to bear the brunt of criminal liability, just like Ghislaine Maxwell did, and basically had to take the entire brunt of the criminal justice system alone because of the fact that, Epstein committed suicide and was not able to be held accountable.
And we can't talk about Diddy without mentioning Cassie, the one whose lawsuit blew the lid off Diddy's alleged scheme. She filed civil suit against Diddy last November under the New York Survivor Act, meaning any sexual assault survivor could file suit against their accused.
Yo, Cassie brought Diddy down. She destroyed Diddy. Boy, she was not playing. She came at Diddy with the Thor's hammer.
Predator, and the statute of limitations didn't matter. Cassie's lawsuit was settled just one day after it was filed, but it was still made public, dropping a laundry list of bombshells about Diddy that the public hadn't previously heard. Cassie's lawsuit outlined years of abuse by Diddy, starting when she was just 19 years old, and at the time, he was 37. According to her suit, Diddy was prone to uncontrollable rage and frequently beat Cassie savagely. Cassie alleged Diddy forced her to use drugs and would physically beat her, rape her, or force her to have sex with prostitutes. Then there's the gun allegation that on at least 2 occasions, Diddy demanded Cassie hold his gun in her purse. The lawsuit goes on to state, quote, "There was no clear reason why."
And see, here we go now, getting back to them same behaviors that's aligning with J-Lo, with Diddy having the ladies carry his firearm for him. They're gonna make a connection to that J-Lo case. There's no way. There's no way I don't see J-Lo getting dragged into this, or anybody else that's been affiliated with Diddy to some degree. They're gonna drag them into this. All these celebrities are about to get dragged into this.
Why Mr. Combs required her to hold his guns, except to reinforce to his young girlfriend that he was violent, powerful, and dangerous. This echoes a similar allegation made by Lil Rod about Jennifer Lopez's part in the 1999 New York nightclub shooting.
Not only did Jennifer Lopez allegedly bring the gun to the club, now we're also looking at years later, Cassie coming forward and saying that Diddy forced her to carry a gun with her when they went out to different events. So again, I think that this is more along the lines of when you look at this from a domestic violence lens, from the standpoint of the abuser being very controlling and demanding certain activities to prove loyalty, to basically put yourself in a bad situation where only he can be the one to save you, basically. So in seeing that, the parallels between J-Lo's experience and Cassie's experience, number one, it brings more credibility to what Cassie said in her pleadings. But also, again, it causes us to look at Jennifer Lopez and be like, some of the comments she made about the end of her relationship to Diddy, in terms of, well, there was infidelity, and she kind of skirted the issue a bit. But when you start to look back at her comments, you start to think, ooh, were you in a domestic violence relationship with Diddy, much like how Cassie ended up in a domestic violence relationship with him?
Cassie kind of broke the floodgates, so to speak, when she made her civil suit back in November. These crazy allegations, we'd never heard anything like it before. And then all of a sudden we have several more people coming forward, and then more once it turns to 2024. So we have multiple plaintiffs who are coming forward alleging very similar things. I'm wondering, without these civil suits, would we even be here right now? Would Diddy even have been arrested and indicted?
I really don't think so. I really don't think so, because Cassie's lawsuit opened the floodgates, and I think it empowered other survivors to come forward and tell their story. And when Little Rod came forward, I think that.
And that's exactly what it was, Chet. Like, Ric Mil fam, like, what it was is Cassie. Cassie's lawsuit in that one day, it literally took them like one day to settle. That lawsuit alone, after that opened the floodgates. Like, everybody started suing Diddy. Like, back to back to back. Allegations started coming out, and then it's just like everything just got backed up. So Diddy been getting hammered and hit with this, guys. Let's see what else they got to say.
That was just another huge just a huge moment in this case, because now you have male victims coming forward. And we know statistically male victims of sexual assault generally don't repeat reasons, but they many times view it as an attack on their masculinity, and they're very concerned about how they would be viewed publicly. And Little Rod was brave, which I really commend his bravery in standing up and saying, listen, this is what happened to me. And that empowered.
I ain't gonna lie, like, you gotta really commend Little Rod for him to come out as a man and and say the things that he had to say in his defense. That takes a lot of courage. So, shout out to Little Rod for that one.
More and more folks to come forward, including most recently Danity Kane, one of the members of Danity Kane, stating that he had abused her and she had witnessed the abuse he had levied on others. So I think that all of these voices coming forward and saying, listen, there's something here, the feds took notice. And even though they may not have been public about it at first, we knew, obviously, when they searched the houses, we knew that this was getting very serious. But they were monitoring this the minute that Cassie filed her lawsuit. And when they read those allegations, I can assure you that investigation started immediately. And then as more and more survivors came forward, again, the feds would be going and interviewing each of those people, seeing what evidence they have. So, for instance, do they have maybe some cell phone footage, or can they substantiate what occurred to them in other ways, maybe follow-up text messages, emails? All of these things are aspects that the feds are able to use to now bring in their case in chief against P. Diddy.
Months ago, we reported that Cassie was working with federal investigators in the case against Diddy. We can't know for sure whether she testified in the grand jury hearing that would ultimately indict Diddy, but it's likely at least some of his accusers did.
I do believe that a number of the survivors would have testified. I don't think that they would have brought all of them, because of the fact that, number one, testifying is traumatizing, especially when you're talking about the most awful day likely of your life and some very degrading things that happen to you. And you have to tell that to a bunch of people you don't know. So you have to be very cautious in when and how you bring your victims and your survivors to testify, and think about that in terms of your strategy. Because again, you may want to save some of the survivors for the actual trial if this does go to trial, and maybe just pick one or two that make the point, right? And then you can fill it in with more evidence as the trial proceeds. But you don't necessarily have to show all of your evidence to the grand jury. You just pick the strongest pieces of evidence so that, again, you're not burning your survivors out before they get to the point of trial unnecessarily. Obviously, they do have to testify and tell their story so that the jury has something to deliberate on. But at the same token, you don't want to push them too much, because again, that trauma is very real. And even if they are getting assistance through counseling or something along those lines, it's still a lot to have to talk about it, especially in such.
And what's crazy as well too is that there was also the scene. Let me bring that up real quick as well too. That lead in AV.
Coat with a fur hood, a translucent chiffon beige V-cut shirt, fur-lined handbag, and jewelry encrusted jeans. Two bedazzled jeans. Like, you doing all this to get with Puffy, and then you gonna put on some bedazzled jeans. Okay. For Crystal to wear to the event. Due to the traumatic events to occur later, Crystal saved the unwashed clothing from that night in her closet, where they remain in a plastic wrap. Remain is present, guys.
Wow.
Oh,
They got DNA evidence. They got DNA. Damn.
You know you're in trouble. Men, you know you're in trouble if you got 3 women around the world saving your cum in the closet in a plastic bag.
For 20 years.
20
Oh!
years. This is the bad side of fame. They're saving your sperm. 20 years in the closet. Is it even, man, this is tough. This is when you know you're famous.
That whole time.
Women be saving like little cards from high school and shit. No, fuck that. We saving DNA today. We ain't doing a little yearbook, I love you cards, we photos. No, fuck all of that. We're saving the DNA from those bedazzled, jewel encrusted jeans. Man, this is a tough one.
Oh,
and it says in her closet where they remain in a plastic. Remain is the present tense, guys. She's got that stuff from 20 years ago. All right. Combs makes promises of career advancement.
Lawsuit number 2 was filed by April Lampros. The suit, filed in Thursday in New York, lists Combs as well as his record company Bad Boy Records and Sony Music subsidiary Arista Records, as well as 10 unnamed defendants and 10 unnamed corporations that allegedly aided and or abetted in the alleged incidents. In the suit, Lampros said she met Diddy in 1994 while she was a student at New York's Fashion Institute of Technology, adding that Diddy would often invite her to his recording studio to impress her and promised to serve her as a mentor. These accusations add an already troubling pattern of behavior that has been described in previous lawsuits. It's important to note that Diddy has denied all allegations and has vowed to fight these claims in court.
Accusations! These are not accusations. This is false accusation.
His legal team has issued statements calling the accusations baseless and a result of opportunistic individuals looking to tarnish his reputation. Legal experts say that the surfacing of the video could play a significant role in these cases. While settlements like Cassie's often come with non-disclosure agreements, the public nature of the video and the ensuing media attention could influence both public opinion and legal proceedings, particularly when it comes to jury selection.
Puffy began calling April incessantly and would often call her just to say, if anyone is in your apartment, I will beat your ass and theirs. I think there was an allegation that he also said this to his mama. Like he was threatening to beating his mom. If you slap your mama, and then on the other hand, we take the video of what he did to Cassie, that distance, right, it's just pure monster. Pure monster. I mean, you don't have respect for anybody if you slap your mama and then you do Cassie like that on the other hand. April's reasonable fear of Puffy left her feeling stuck with him and with no way out. He knew where she lived and worked and had connections to ensure her compliance with his demands. She felt that if she disobeyed him, he would take away her dreams of pursuing a career in his world. Puffy also would threaten to blacklist her in the industry if she tried to mess with him in any way. April's dream and everything she'd been working so hard for were in the palm of his hands. All right, do you want to read this one, number 3?
All right, incident number 3. One night in 1996, Diddy ordered April to his Manhattan apartment. I love it. He did it like it was like Uber Eats, like, come over, April. Diddy's residence was in the 30s and Park near the Midtown Tunnel. When April arrived, Kim Porter and 2 other people were present.
Kim.
Diddy introduced the women. They went to a nightclub. After the club closed, they returned to Diddy's apartment and they began a night of drinking. A couple hours into the evening, Diddy forced Kim and April to take ecstasy.
What?
Diddy instructed the women to open their mouths. When they complied with the demand, Diddy forced the pill down their throats to ensure the pills were swallowed. Diddy's hands were so far down April's throat she gagged. He even checked under their tongues.
Jesus, and I think this is the first time that Kim Porter has come up in any?
Yes.
Man, Kim is now making an appearance.
Yeah, and that's the wild part about the gang is like, now Kim's actually being brought up into these lawsuits, so you already see where they're gonna go with this. And just think, they have they're gonna take their, of course they have due process and they have to get, they're gonna say his court date and everything, but they have all this time and all these resources they're gonna investigate everything, subpoena text messages, anything from the past that occurred between him and any accomplices that he may have dealt with. So it's gonna be a wild case. So let's go ahead and jump back over and see what's going on here with law and crime.
With the huge media frenzy around it, and so many people weighing in, and whether it be social media or other celebrities or things like that. So those are some of the things I think the assistant U.S. attorney would have been considering when deciding who should be brought in front of the grand jury to testify.
And when it comes time for trial, we could expect to hear from Cassie or other accusers in federal court. You're bringing up a really good point because, as you said, this is probably one of the darkest times of these survivors' lives. And they have to come forward with these serious allegations and relive the trauma that I'm sure they've been working to overcome. It's really tough, but we're assuming that a lot of them are going to testify at the trial whenever that may be. And there are several accusers that have to go through and do all of that. What would it look like at the trial then?
At the trial, now the key is the U.S. Attorney's Office has to make sure that they're not going too far afield with bad character evidence. We saw how that kind of backfired in the Harvey Weinstein case, where, as well as the Bill Cosby case, where other instances were brought in that were maybe not as close in time, or more so not really enlightening the jury about what happened in the charges that were in the indictment, but more so, he's just a really bad, horrible, predatory person. That may be the truth. However, when it comes to proving the charges at hand, you have to be very focused on making sure the jury understands what happened during the timeframes that are specified in the indictment. And so if some of these other survivors, let's say something happened 10 years ago, that might be too far in time for them to be able to testify. But if we're talking about an instance of something that happened last year, for instance, that might be closer in time to allow them to be able to testify. And again, if they have specific knowledge about certain aspects of the indictment, of course, they'll be brought to testify. But again, you have to be very cautious because you want to be able to preserve, if you're able to get a conviction, you want to be able to preserve it on appeal by not making these types of errors.
After his indictment this week, Diddy pleaded not guilty to all charges and was denied bond twice. A statement from his legal team reads, quote, Sean Diddy Combs is a music icon, self-made entrepreneur, loving family man, and proven philanthropist who has spent the last 30 years building an empire, adoring his children, and working to uplift the Black community. He is an imperfect person, but is not criminal. To his credit, Mr. Combs has been nothing but cooperative with this investigation, and he voluntarily relocated to New York last week in anticipation of these charges. Please reserve your judgment until you have all the facts. These are the acts of an innocent man with nothing to hide, and he looks forward to clearing his name in court. More updates are sure to come in the—
That's a wild one, man. Like, Diddy got a good legal team. That PR statement was perfect. Like, you can't ask for any better. So stay locked in with me, stay tuned with me. We're gonna see where this whole case goes, how it's gonna play out, and we're gonna be providing more updates. If you're still new to the channel and you like the content, go ahead and like, subscribe, drop a comment. Appreciate all the love and support, and I am reading the comments, so shout out to everybody on the last video that's been commenting. Go ahead and drop a comment, like the video, share it to your neighbor and a friend, and go ahead and join, hit that subscribe button and join the Ric Mil family team. Hope y'all have a wonderful day. Take care.